All right, just minutes from now, former President Jimmy Carter will begin his final journey to Washington, and Georgia mourners have paid their respects, filing past his casket at the Presidential Library for Jimmy Carter in Atlanta. At the top of the hour, the departure ceremony gets underway at the Carter Center. His family will accompany the 39th president to Washington, where he will lie in state at the Capitol Rotunda before his national funeral service on Thursday. Let's take a closer look at Jimmy Carter's life and legacy. Presidential historian Tim Naftali joins us now along with Kate Anderson Brower. She's a journalist and the author of several books, including Team of Five, The President's Club, and The Age of Trump, and The Residents Inside the Private World of the White House. Thank you both for joining us. Kate, you had the opportunity to interview both the former president and the former first lady in their home. That must have been a treat. What was that like?
Well, it was incredible. I went down to Plains in 2018 and interviewed them. I got to go listen to one of his Sunday sermons, his Sunday school services, and I was struck how absolutely normal they were. I mean, a lot of people have said it, but it's absolutely true. They lived in this very, relatively modest home, a ranch house that they had built together in the 60s. And, I sat with them in their living room. They sat next to each other on the sofa and offered me water that they gave me themselves. And I think I was just struck by how close they were in that moment. They would turn to each other. President Carter would ask Mrs. Carter, Rosalind, what she thought when I asked a question. I think he was really interested in me talking to her because I'd written about first ladies before, and he felt like she hadn't been given enough credit for all the work she did on mental health. And so they kind of propped each other up during the interview.
And Tim, I mean, a lot of Americans out there remember Jimmy Carter because of his post-presidency, his life after leaving the White House. He didn't, he lost to Ronald Reagan. He didn't cry sour grapes and so on. He built this tremendous life where he built homes for people and so on. I think that is just going to be a massive part of his legacy.
It will be, but one thing, Rick, is that today and on Thursday, we're going to be reminded about the various phases of his national and public service. His public service began before he ran for office in Georgia. It began when he joined the Navy as a midshipman. And his public service, of course, continued after he left the White House. His complex, full life will be on display to be understood and to be celebrated this week. And so we will be talking about his post-presidency. Indeed, President Carter wanted people to talk about his post-presidency, but we will also be returning to the time before he came to the White House. And we will see, as we discuss this and think about it over the next few days, the richness of this man's life and what he did for this country.
Yeah, and Kate, Jimmy and Rosalind Carter were both just a national treasure. It was almost a package deal with the two of them. Was this a couple that was genuinely driven by the need to help people? And what kind of example does that set?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I asked them what their greatest achievement was, Rosalind said it was nearly eradicating guinea worm disease. There used to be thousands of cases. Now there are less than 24. And this is a horrific disease. And so their work with the Carter Center was the single most important thing. But as Tim said, Jimmy Carter was asked, he said, if I had to choose 4 more years in the White House and the Carter Center, I would choose the Carter Center. But it could have been both. He resented being a one-term president. He thought he had much more work to do. And of course, Ronald Reagan came in and undid a lot of the work the Carters had done in the White House.
But Tim, the Carter presidency, and I was watching a documentary on Jimmy Carter during the holidays. That's how much of a nerd I am. But PBS did a marvelous job on the Carter presidency. And it documented a lot of the failures of his administration and a lot of the challenges he was dealing with in the aftermath of Watergate and the Ford pardon and so on. It was that kind of time in the 70s. But we're just showing these images right now, the Middle East peace process. There were some successes there that obviously will stand the test of time.
Jim, this is the key thing about presidencies. They center on a human being, and every human being is flawed. So presidencies have high points and low points, and for that reason, to be complete and full as a historian, as someone looking back on a presidency, one needs to keep in mind the peaks and the valleys. So yes, there was inflation, though not really of President Carter's creation. Yes, there was the failure of the hostage rescue mission, but there was also courage in deciding to go ahead with it. And yes, there was the weakness of President Carter in his inability to build bridges to Congress. On the other hand, the Carter administration had enormous legislative successes. So in understanding a presidency, just in understanding a president, we have to keep in mind the valleys and the peaks. Jimmy Carter's 4 years are rich with experience. They're rich with failure. They're also rich with achievement. So there's much to discuss and much to reflect on as we see President Carter go to his deserved rest.
All right, and it was a long life, a remarkable life. Kate and Tim, thank you very much. We appreciate it.